Hello and welcome to the Fishing Guide Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Wiegmann. I tell you what, I've come over here to Alabama, and that's the reason why we're inside is because we've been outside all day, been on the water, been doing some Livescope fishing with Kevin McCarley here, and he's on the pro staff of B&M Poles and a bunch of others. I'm sure he'll mention later in the program, but we are on Wheeler. And I was going to say we're right here in the town of Decatur. So tell us a little bit, because you are actually, and I'm excited because we have a homer, I guess, here, right? So tell us, you lived around here. Tell us about growing up and being in this area.
Okay, I'm originally from Madison, which is probably about 15 miles east of here. But the Tennessee River runs right through there in Madison, Huntsville, it runs all the way from Guntersville to here through Decatur, all the way to Rogersville. Grew up fishing with my grandmother and my father in the backwaters of the Tennessee River, which primarily, I would say, the Arrowhead area, Beaver Dam Creek areas, and also right here in Decatur in those flats. As you come into Decatur on Highway 20, we used to stick as many cane poles as we could under our leg and just drift those flats and, really catch some slobber knocker crappie out there.
So you've gone from growing up here and stuff to now fishing out of a 20-foot Ranger boat.
It's a
big engine. And
big difference from the little 12-foot flat bottom of my grandfather's that I started out in, no trolling motor. It was just a paddle, and you sculling along and drifting those corks, and some of the best times I ever had. Especially with my grandmother. Really miss her, and she was a real inspiration getting me going fishing. Her and my dad both. I guess my dad's probably the one that got me into tournament fishing. I would go fish a few of the Shoals area crappie club tournaments as a guest, and once I started doing it as a guest, I really took an interest to it and went out and bought my own flat bottom. And, now we're fishing out of a 21-foot Ranger. So I really took to it. And I just love the sport, and I love the people. I've met some really good people out there doing this, and it's been a blessing to me.
Well, let's talk about your teammate then.
Yeah, old John.
Your partner. Old John
Harrison.
He's getting a plug. He's not even have to work, or he doesn't even have to show up.
John has that look. He's just got that look. I don't think I've ever seen a picture of him smiling. He's just got that look. But man, John is he's diehard, and he's one of those guys kind of like me. Years ago, before I got into crappie fishing, man, I was into deer hunting. And that's where all my efforts were put. I was out trying to get that biggest deer. I think John was the same way. John's won 2 or 3 national championships with baying hogs. Doing the dog thing with hogs. So, when John got out of that and decided he was going to get into crappie fishing, he went into it full bore, and no pun intended there. But
that's right.
I really enjoy having a partner like John, because when you go somewhere and you hit the water, there's not a bit of let up in him. We're going to do everything we can to finish the best we can, catch the best fish we can, and it's a true partnership. There's a lot of guys out there that some of them are netting, some of them are fishing. Well, me and John both fish, and we both net. You just have to recognize when it's your turn to catch a fish and when it's your turn to take a back seat. Me and John have seemed to be able to do that real well.
That takes us into what everyone wants to know is, how do you catch these dang fish on Wheeler?
Man, Wheeler is a shallow water lake for the most part.
Okay.
It's really it's really where they dump all the water on this section of the Tennessee River, all the way from Pickwick to Guntersville. Wheeler will fluctuate 5 to 6 feet from winter to summer. So it is the flood control lake of the Tennessee River in this area. They're going to get rid of all the water because you can spread it out. There's so many flats. There's so many shallow areas, stump flats you can push that water into, where, say, somewhere like Guntersville, it doesn't have anywhere else to go. Wheeler, catching crappie on Wheeler, live scoping. My favorite way to catch fish here is live scoping now, which it used to be spider rigging.
Right.
And I love spider rigging the stump flats, and I still do it from time to time. But you get in the summertime like this, you might as well put the trolling rods up. You might as well get one pole,
right,
and get out that live scope, fire it up, and go looking for structure, because that's where you're going to find the fish.
So structure, are you talking about cover, like structure in a ledge, or are you talking about wood?
Well, I try to find those trees. One of my favorite places in the summertime would be up on the upper end or lower end down toward the dam.
Right.
I enjoy fishing the First Creek area, Elk River, and both of those areas have a lot of timber that are already in there. And what they do is, it's not necessarily growing timber,
right,
but it's logs that have come from way up Elk River, right, which actually comes from Timms Ford Lake.
Wow.
Elk River is fed from Timms Ford.
Jeez.
And the Elk River comes all the way into the Tennessee there, around the Rogersville area.
Wow.
But there's so many huge logs that get jammed up on that Elk River that you can find nice structure without having to go out and put it out. Right. And it's not necessarily standing, growing timber. It's what's drifted up into, say, a sandbar.
Right.
A lot of shallow areas on that Elk River that catch and collect all that debris, and it holds crappie.
Yeah. And so using Livescope, is there a certain depth that you're looking for? And if you're looking for a certain depth, are you changing your size of your jigs? Are you changing them to, because you're fishing in 3 foot and then you might be fishing in 15?
Well, a lot of people probably do, but I don't. I'm generally a 1/8 ounce guy. That's what I keep on my rod all the time. My favorite rod's a 12-foot brush cutter. If I'm in 5 foot stump flats and I see a fish on a stump, I feel comfortable pitching past that fish,
right,
bringing that bait right back to him to get a bite. A lot of times that shallow water, I'll power pole down when I get to a good stump or something that's covered with fish,
right,
and I'll cast. I might put up that 12-foot brush cutter and get out a 6-foot sharpshooter and cast at those fish. But in the summer, primarily, you need to look for the ledges. Say if you're in the Elk River, you're in 20 foot of water in the main channel, well, it's going to come up pretty drastic on each side. And those ledges are where you need to be looking for that structure that's gotten lodged in there. And there's a ton of stuff on this lake that people have put out.
Right.
A ton of stuff I never knew was there until I got Livescope. So if you're putting out structure on the lake, there is nothing safe. There is nothing safe nowadays with forward-facing sonar. No matter what you put out, somebody's going to find it.
Yeah, sooner or later, someone will drift over it when they're retying or something, and they'll be, well, look at this brand new brush pile.
Right here. I've seen stuff from buckets with sticks in it to whole tree tops to the little porcupines. Look like a bowling ball with sticks sticking out of it. So I've found all kinds of stuff since I've gotten that Livescope, and it's really, it's made me a better fisherman.
Yeah, and so using 1/8 ounce jig. Tell us some more about your rigs, your poles, the line that you're using. Are you using high vis, or what are you doing with your equipment?
I normally use just a clear Gamma.
Okay.
Usually use an 8-pound.
All right.
On my brush cutter, I'll use an 8-pound. If I'm going to a smaller spinning rod like the sharpshooter, I try to downsize to a 6 or a 4-pound test for that smaller rod.
And is that mono?
It is mono. I don't use fluoro. I don't use braid. I'm just an old school mono guy. Still tie a simple knot.
Right.
I think I've showed you before. I call it my granny knot, because that's what my grandmother taught me. So I'm just a simple fishing guy that's got a little bit of electronics that's tried to make the most of them.
Right. So you talked, when we were out on the water, you talked some about finding and catching the fish, but is there any tricks to your electronics that help you see it better? How do you set your electronics up so that you can see it? I know you were talking about leaving it in the same range so you saw the fish the same.
What I like to do is I like to keep mine anywhere from 20 to 25 foot on the depth range.
Okay.
The only time I will ever adjust that is if I get into 5 foot or less of water.
Okay.
One reason for that is it allows you to, when you're looking at that fish, if you start shallowing up, that fish is going to look bigger than he really is.
Right.
So if you can keep it at that a consistent depth, what you're looking at is always going to be the same.
Right.
I guess what I mean by that is if you're looking at a 2-pound fish and you've got it set at 20 foot, if you raise that up to 5 foot, that 2-pound fish is going to look like a 4-pound fish from Grenada. Right. Or he's going to look like a drum, and you're just going to pass him by. So if you keep it at the 20 foot, that helps as far as the recognition of what size crappie you're going for. And as far as the distance out from the boat,
right.
I always, when I'm searching, when I'm driving along searching, I keep it on 60 foot.
Okay.
I see something I like. I see a brush top, a piece of structure covered with fish, slow the boat down, put on the brakes. I'll dial that thing back down to about 30 foot where I can get in there and really pinpoint which fish I want to target.
Right.
And helps you have a better approach on your bait to that fish.
Let's talk about presentation. So today we saw a couple different presentations. Tell them about different ways they can use the jig and to catch them live scoping.
Sure. There's a lot of people. I'd say 80% of the people out there, including my partner John,
right,
always runs a tungsten weight with 2 bobber stops and then a jig. Okay, I'm right the opposite. I never run a weight above mine. I always love to stick with a 1/8 ounce jig.
Right.
Let it fall how it does. And that's just a little bit difference in our fishing styles.
Right.
They both work. They're both effective. I just prefer to have that one jig.
Right.
I've heard horror stories before. People catch them and that extra weight will kind of almost knock the jig out of their mouth sometimes. But John's really good with the weight above. I'm not.
Right.
So, that's just really, I guess, kind of a personal preference for me, but I like just the one jig head.
Right. Is it because you have current here?
We do.
Is it more dead sticking, or when does that come into play where you're dead sticking, or maybe you're moving the bait more? And tell them a little bit about how fast you like to move your bait sometimes.
I got you. Yeah. Really and truly, that's one of those things you just have to let the fish kind of guide you on and tell you what to do. But I always start out trying to pitch past my target.
Right.
Bring it back with some movement, see if they react. If they don't react, I'll try to drop it straight on their head. And a lot of times you can get that reaction bite, just dropping it straight down, give it a little pop. As soon as you get above their head, give it a little pop, get their attention. A lot of times it'll trigger that big bite usually.
So dead sticking's good here?
Dead sticking. Right. Casting, running it by them. You just kind of have to see what the fish are wanting that day because it does change.
Well, today you cast it out and then you got down there and they kind of it was in the right spot, but you reeled it up real quick.
Yeah. I try to take it away from them sometimes. I
gotcha.
I learned that from old Eric Cagle. Now, if you ever watched old Eric, he's probably the one, in my opinion, that kind of invented, or the first one I see, try to take that bait away from that fish.
Right.
And it's almost like, whoa, you're not getting away from me. And it almost makes them just want to go after it harder. But there are times when it's just dead 90 degrees out here, and the fish are kind of like us. They want to sit on the couch and not do a lot to eat, But
that's right.
If you can get a bait right there and just dead stick it right in front of them, if they're not necessarily hungry, you might just aggravate them enough to where they will bite. And I've had to do that a lot.
So
in the summer.
Yeah, color patterns for soft plastics here. What's the big colors that seem to work the best? And style, are you using a paddle tail or like a bait that doesn't have any action at all to it?
Yeah, I like to use Wheeler's does have black and white crappie. Majority of the fish that I catch here are white crappie, especially in these stump flats.
Right.
Or on the edges of these channels and stuff. You get into the black crappie, you get out on the main river channel and you can find some treetops, you'll find more black crappie.
Right.
But I tend to try to always start out with 1.5 inch slider grub.
Right.
Just a little small paddle tail to it, but it's a small profile bait.
Right.
Which will work for black or white crappie. If I feel like it's too small of a profile, I'll go up to the 2 1/8 inch minnow that slider makes. I've caught a lot of fish on that too. And here lately, since I've come out with my own bait, the K-Mac Bogey Fry, I've been using that quite a bit and catching a lot of fish on that too.
So tell us a little bit about that bait then.
It's
Where do they find this? Is this just packaged in Alabama? Is that
it's a gentleman up on Lake Chickamauga who makes bass baits, and like I say, it's Pro-Z Baits. You can look them up online. All of my baits are stocked all throughout Guntersville.
Right.
And we're getting them moved over this way toward Wheeler a little more.
I gotcha.
Place Custom Made Baits in Tanner. They stock them. And we've got a couple other stores looking at stocking them here toward the Rogersville area as well. But
I gotcha.
Guntersville, you can find them at GTO, Waterfront, several of the places over there, Skyline Grocery. A lot of the places over in the Guntersville area carry the K-Mac Bogey Fry.
Right. Well, that's a good spot to just plug in tackle time now, because PICO Lures has, do they have a wide selection of lures for crappies. They got crankbaits that are just phenomenal, and they're really a hot bait right now. They have the square bill, and they have a deep diver. We didn't do any of that, but you did mention that it would work.
It would.
So people would go out there and troll some crankbaits pretty much just about any place, especially in those Mississippi lakes. They really like the Picos, and so you can check them out online, or even their soft plastics, and they have a full line of soft plastic, and also bass jigs and bass lures, so you can check them out there at PICOLures.com. If they wanted to find out more about you, Kevin, and what you're up to, you have some social media outlets they can go check out?
Yes, sir. I'm on Facebook, just Kevin McCarley. I'm on Instagram as McCarley Kevin.
Okay.
We have a YouTube channel, TikTok. So out there on several of the platforms. I'm still one of those older guys learning how to get involved with the TikTok a little more, than some of these younger guys. They got it down, but
you should have done something in the boat today.
Yeah, we should have done a little TikTok video or something. But but it's social media has really changed things so much for us. It allows us to reach people that never would have known who Kevin McCarley was. I have people that follow me from up north to down south to out west, and it's really kind of neat to see people make comments and congratulate you on accomplishments and things, and that's kind of a cool deal.
Yep, there you go. There you have it. Well, like I always like to end the show, make sure you keep your hook sharp and your lures in the water.